Let's go set history on fire. In the 1200s, Genghis Khan had unified the Mongol tribes and led them to conquer a huge empire, much to the chagrin of China and most of the Middle East. By the time he died in 1227, the Mongols on a military level were superior to just about anyone in the world. They could pretty much conquer at will. By the time his successor, Ogodei, took over, the Mongols were pretty much unstoppable. There was nothing to stand in their way. And sure enough, under Ogodei, they conquered much of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, including raids in Korea, Bulgaria, much of Russia, Poland, Hungary, parts of Romania, some Germanic lands, Croatia, Serbia, and even made it into Austria. Some authors suggest by 1240 the Mongols were set and ready to conquer all of Europe within the span of maybe 10 to 15 years. It's true that they face a few obstacles, the steppes on which their power relied on, and pretty much in Hungary. Everything west in Europe, in Hungary, does not have the steppes. But then again, it's also true that the Mongols had scored military victories in all kinds of places without the steppes. The climate in Western Europe wasn't as good for the Mongols, but again, the Mongols had won in southern China under unfavorable climatic conditions. The same goes for castles and fortifications. Yes, they struggled a little more with castles and fortifications, but it's not exactly like China was void of them, and they still managed to conquer all of it. So, with seemingly nothing standing in the way of conquest of Western Europe, the Mongols suddenly stopped. Many historians believe that this has to do with the health issues facing Ogodei. Because what ended up happening is this, is like the Mongols were renowned for a serious passion for drinking booze. Ogodei was exceptional even by Mongol standards, which is saying quite a lot. There's a funny story about how his advisors were begging him to cut down on his alcohol consumption, and Ogodei actually agreed. He said, okay, I'll stick to a certain number of cups a day and don't go past that. But what ended up happening is that he actually had cups built that were much larger than usual, sort of defeating the purpose. This led to Ogodei's premature death. He died on December 11th, 1241, after a late-night drinking bout when his liver finally decided to call it quits. He was only in his 50s. And he lived to even just 70 years old, nothing excessively old, just 70. There's a strong possibility that the Mongols would have conquered all of Europe, with consequences that are extremely hard to predict. So it's likely that his early death is what stopped the Mongol momentum, since it forced the Mongols back to decide who would be next in charge. There are many theories for why they stopped the invasion, but the idea that Ogodei's death is what did it is the most accepted one among scholars. And the tricky part is that they would never be as unified or as ready to conquer Europe as they had been in 1241. So this really is what stops the momentum of Mongol conquest in Europe. Not only at this juncture, Europe ducked a major bullet, but also you can say that it owes its position of strength to the Mongols themselves. How does that work? Well, because the reality is that in the 1240s there were two major civilizations that were both greater and more powerful than anything that Europe could field at this time. And those were in China and the Abbasid dynasty. And yet both of them got crushed by the Mongols. China being conquered, the Abbasid dynasty being flat out destroyed. And as a result of that, Europe found itself at the top spot since the first two contenders were crushed under the Mongol heel.